professor in the education department, and my topic was pink milk comes from pink cows. So we were talking about cafeteria lunches and what kids think food comes from and where they think food comes from, and then also what responsibility schools have in making sure that kids understand what's on their plate. We started out by talking about things that kids say when they encounter food, like they might see a cattail on the side of the road and they think it's a corn dog plant because it looks like corn dogs on the end, so they think corn dogs come from plants. So we had those kinds of conversations. A lot of them thought that, as far as their reactions were concerned, that schools had a big responsibility in teaching students what it was that was on their plate and what kinds of food they should be eating. We talked a lot about ethically how fair is it that schools end up being responsible for basically everything in society that the rest of society doesn't take care of. They were also very interested when we looked at some school lunch menus, and they found that the wealthier districts that we were looking at, we had a smattering of different school lunch menus, and the wealthier districts were the ones who had not yet complied with some of the school lunch regulations. You could tell from their lunch menus that they were still eating the same white bun food, they were still eating the hamburgers, and they were still eating the pizza, and they had starchy vegetables 3 or 4 times a week. So the other districts that we were looking at that had less affluent families going to those schools, they were following these regulations, and we wondered, first of all, how money has to play into that. So kids that are eating free and reduced lunches, how that impacts how schools have to regulate their menus and follow these regulations more closely. But then the students also brought up, why aren't those families in those other districts making a bigger stink about the fact that their kids are still eating these really unhealthy meals? I think that anytime I get to interact with students outside of education and outside of just, the students I normally get to talk to, it's hugely valuable for me as a professor because I get to know other people across disciplines and get to learn where the kids are coming from, what kinds of things are important to them, and we can have really cross-curricular discussions, which is nice. And I think for them too, it's great to be able to come and meet with a professor over a topic that may or may not ever come up in class, but that's just interesting to everyone who's involved. When you're in high school, you don't get a lot of choice. You don't see your teachers outside of their classrooms very often. You don't hear about their interests, maybe what they're thinking about research-wise or what they think about just in their own lives, what's important to them. And I think that the teach-in gives prospective students a way to see how their professors are engaged outside of just their classroom community and in the wider, broader community, and how we can relate to one another in personal and connected ways.